Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists, episode 659. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
My name is Zach.
And we're here to talk movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. It's been a weird week, so I can say, James, nice to see you again. But
you.
Zach, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
How are you guys doing? Did everybody
Doing
have a
good.
good Thanksgiving?
I had a great Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing-
What about you?
Nothing crazy happened? Nothing of note?
We hosted a
Okay.
couple and their son from our neighborhood, and it was their first Thanksgiving ever. They're
Really?
from Poland, and they
Oh,
never had a
wow.
Thanksgiving before, so that was fun.
And did you just make them food and you're like, this is pretty much it? This is
We made them the
Thanksgiving.
food,
Right.
and a lot of the food they were very skeptical of. That they weren't super familiar with or thought that they would like, so they took
Mhm.
extremely small portions, like polite portions,
Mhm.
and then they ended up taking seconds, fourths, and fifths. was great.
Nice. That's awesome.
Did they understand the reason for the holiday, or was that part of the conversation?
It's in the name.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, like
No,
I know other
we-
countries have Thanksgiving like Canada, but Thanksgiving is somewhat unique to.
we didn't
the
go
Western
into
world.
we didn't go into the whole history kind of thing. Although my kids watched a video about like the history of the Mayflower or whatever,
Okay,
and there was like so many things I didn't know.
like
I guess I've never learned about the Mayflower.
Yeah,
Well,
like
do you know
what?
how long? Well, half of them died from the Mayflower,
Okay.
like
Like-
in that first winter.
Oh yeah. Like the amount of people who landed in the New World who actually made it to Thanksgiving is like half.
Yeah,
Hmm.
wild. And they went an average of 2 miles per hour across the Atlantic.
So it took forever.
Yeah, it was just weeks and weeks and weeks.
Interesting.
You guys have
That's
obviously never been
crazy.
to the Mayflower replica in Boston Harbor, or whatever it is.
I did as a kid,
Yeah.
but I don't.
Okay,
I don't remember how big it was.
And I
kinda
didn't even
small,
realize-
right?
it's not that big. I mean,
Right.
it's obviously it's a tall ship. It's big, but it's not.
It's not what you
massive.
imagine.
No.
Yeah.
It's a respectable size ship.
And I didn't realize that Plymouth Rock was the second place that they landed and got out and spent time at.
Third.
Third?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They first hit Provincetown, which is the tip of Cape Cod,
Okay.
and they're like, yeah, this is no good. And then they hit First Encounter Beach, which is the beach I used to play in when I was a kid, and that's when they ran into the local Native Americans who chased them away. They got back on their boat, and then they ended up in Plymouth. And Plymouth Rock is very small. It's quite underwhelming. And it's not even like the actual rock they landed on. Just the town of Plymouth was like, yeah, that's the rock that they first made landfall on.
We're gonna call that one Plymouth Rock.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like there's a gate around it, and it's a large boulder. It's not that impressive.
Hmm. Isn't Thanksgiving
Um,
like kind of it didn't really happen?
It didn't happen how you were taught in kindergarten.
Right.
Yes. I mean it did happen.
Like
But-
the idea that like the Indians sat down with the pilgrims and they like shared a meal one day, and then they started doing that every year. Like that never happened.
They did sit down and share a meal.
I'm
But
sure
I don't
they
think it-
shared
I
a
don't-
bunch of them.
But it was, I don't believe it became an annual tradition.
Sure.
Right. And also the pilgrims were kind of starving at the time in
Mhm.
I think it's not the Wampanoag. The Wampanoag people were like, all right, we'll help you out. And
Mhm.
in
Yeah,
like
they
the
taught 'em how to
70s.
grow corn.
Exactly. Maize.
Sure.
Sorry. I was talking about
Yeah, yeah.
Simpsons.
You had
Corn.
to bury
maize.
a fish on top of the kernel.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
In like the 70s, the chief of the Wampanoag tribe was asked like, "Oh, do you have any regrets?" And he was like, "Yeah, I regret that we fed those pilgrims 400 years ago."
That's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
we had a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, sorry, this guy.
We learned something.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Nice. Well, one of my favorite things I did over the Thanksgiving weekend was go see Gladiator 2. I'm looking forward to talking about it with you guys.
I also did that.
Nice.
Did you see that alone or with people?
I saw it alone.
Okay.
The plan was to see it with people, and then everybody flaked out on me. Family members flaked out on me. So it was fine. I went alone, and AMC gives you a free large popcorn and a free large drink for your birthday. And I haven't been going to the theater a lot, so the night I saw Gladiator 2 was the expiration date for those coupons.
Oh.
So I literally had popcorn dinner.
Oh, popcorn dinner is the best.
Popcorn dinner is the best.
I love popcorn dinner.
I haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah, Kyle, you get popcorn every time you go to the theater, right?
Not every time, most times.
Okay.
Really? I used to do that, and then I kind of stopped. I don't know. I got sick of it.
Well, so I have like the refill tub. You buy it for like $20 at the beginning of the year, and then it's $5 to refill it. So I'll just bring that with me and eat 2/3 of that, which is way too much popcorn.
AMC has that, but only at Classics. At AMC Classics, which seems like not cool. Why do I have to go to the crappy movie theater to get the good popcorn deal?
Oh, Classics are there not great movie theaters?
They're like the old theaters that they bought in acquisitions.
Oh, interesting.
Did the bare minimum to remodel them to AMC's.
I don't go to the AMC in our town. It's terrible.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's like the parking lot is awful. The seats are all like fading away. They shut down for all because they had rats.
Yep, sounds like it should be an AMC Classic.
Yeah, so I mean, but unfortunately, it's the only IMAX theater in Madison. So if I want to see IMAX, I have to go to AMC.
Sure. Around here, the AMC theaters are the good ones.
Nice.
Regals are fine, but Zach didn't pick a team.
Is AMC is no nicer than Regal? They're
sure
comparable.
it is. Is there a Dolby theater at a Regal?
Probably. I have no idea.
Nope, not in Orlando.
There's not?
Nope. I've been to all of them. Not a single Dolby theater in any of them.
This is, apparently James super cares about audio, whereas I've seen his home theater setup, and it's the biggest TV you've ever seen, and
with
zero sound system
nothing
whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly.
But
for right now, right, I'm getting it
cares
there.
about. Yeah.
So Zach sent me a picture of the TV on the ground with Jacob next to it.
Yeah.
And this TV's taller than what, Jacob's 4 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah, this TV is taller than a 4-year-old. Just
I mean,
insane.
4-year-olds aren't that tall, Kyle. I don't know how many 4-year-olds you've been around lately. They're not exactly tall.
Jacob seems like a tall 4-year-old. Am I correct, Zach?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he's tall for his age. So he's like a 5-year-old. TV's bigger than a 5-year-old. Or a big
5-year-olds
4-year-old.
aren't tall either. No, I mean, if you want to get an idea, just look at that box behind me. That's about how big it is.
Go stand up next to the box, because like right now the box is behind you, so there's no perspective.
What do you mean go stand next to the box?
I need perspective. I don't know how big that box is. Is it close? Is it far?
Fine. I can't hear you, so don't talk crap about me.
All right. Should we talk about his beard now? And he's off the podcast.
No, he asked us not to say anything about him.
Okay. All right. So it is.
Wider than my arm.
It's not quite as tall as James's shoulders.
It's wider than my wingspan,
Yes.
which I'm 6'3", so I don't know what that means about your wingspan, but
Your wingspan is pretty close to your height.
right. I remember hearing that. All right. You guys ready to jump into this?
Yeah. Let's talk Gladiator 2.
I think it's time. We're going to talk Gladiator 2, but before we do that, we need to remind you there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. If you haven't checked it out, just go there, search Cinereelists. You could also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. Support the podcast, get extra after show audio. You could leave us an Apple Podcast review. We'd appreciate that, 5 stars only. Or send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelists.com, REEL with an S on the end. Send a comment, question, list suggestion, movie suggestion, etc., etc. Maybe consider sending us your top 10 favorite films of 2024. You know, as you get through December, start making that list and shoot it our way towards the end of the year. We'll include it in our annual listener aggregate top 10. Let's talk Gladiator, a movie that's in theaters now. We're going to get into it right after this clip.
I always get what I want. Why did you let him live?
You bought a gladiator, not a slave. My will is my own.
How blue is your blood? Perhaps the heart of a Roman beats in that chest. The greatest temple Rome ever built, the Colosseum, because this is what they believe in, power. They gather here to watch the strong strike down the weak.
There has to be something else.
There is nothing else.
There has to be another Rome.
There is no other Rome. The dream? The dream of Rome? It's an old man's fantasy.
Who are you? What was your name before you traded it for a Roman one?
You'll never know. I have a destiny. The gods delivered you to me. You will be my instrument.
I will never be your instrument in this life or the next.
That was Gladiator 2, a 2024 epic historical action film. Directed and produced by Ridley Scott. Starring Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn, Fred Hetchinger, Lior Raz, Derek Jacobi, Connie Nielsen, and Denzel Washington, amongst others. The official IMDb plot synopsis for Gladiator 2 is: after his home is conquered by the tyrannical emperors who now lead Rome, Lucius is forced to enter the Colosseum and must look to his past to find strength to return the glory of Rome to its people.
It's right there in the plot description.
I guess so.
Okay, well, I guess
It's not a
so much
spoiler.
so much for a spoiler section on this. Let's get right into it, apparently.
I mean, we could bleep it.
As I said before we start recording, I did not know that our main character, what his connection was to the past. And neither did Zach, right? You also said you didn't know that.
Right. You're right.
Sure. Okay. So are we bleeping it?
No.
It's in the
I
plot
don't care.
description.
Okay.
I don't care.
You know what I mean?
Right.
On IMDb. It's not like we're spoiling it for people.
No, but
IMDb is spoiling it for people.
we discussed not discussing that until the spoiler section,
Sure.
but now it's out there. So
Okay.
All
Well,
right,
we've
Gladiator 2.
we've still only said it once, so we could just bleep that.
no, we'll move on.
Okay,
And
we'll
then
move
we will
on.
save our we'll save our spoilery talk about that for the spoiler section.
Sure. Okay.
People
So-
that don't want to be spoiled don't listen to our reviews before they see the movie. Right?
I think some people don't listen no matter what, even if they don't care about being spoiled. Like they only listen to reviews of movies that they've seen before.
Sure. Well, again, irrelevant to what I'm saying. I'm saying that people who don't want to be spoiled don't listen.
Sure.
So the only people that
Yes.
listen are the people that don't care.
But that's really the only spoiler, right? Pretty much. I mean, that's the
Well,
main
and
spoiler.
what happens, how it ends.
Sure. Okay. Then we'll leave how it ends for the spoiler section. It'll be a pretty short spoiler section. Okay. Gladiator 2. Direct sequel to Gladiator 1 happens
Yeah.
what 50 or the movie starts, it's 15 years later from the ending of Gladiator 1. It's a movie 24 years in the making, basically. Well, maybe not in the making, but it's been 24 years since the first Gladiator was released. That movie won Best Picture, was very critically lauded, and also did well at the box office. A lot of people love it, I would say. A lot of dudes love it. I don't know if it's universally loved, but it's definitely a guy's favorite.
Would you like to know
Would I like to know how many people love it?
if it's just dudes or not?
I'm sure there's some people who are not dudes who love it, but I think mostly it's dudes. Would be my guess.
Sure.
You can tell me this?
Well, on IMDb, you can break it down by like different demographics.
Okay. Yeah, give
You
me
know, by,
give me the old male, female, undeclared.
Yeah, but I can't find that right now, so I don't.
Oh, okay.
Normally it's there, but I'm
Well,
not
then-
signed in. That's why.
Wouldn't the issue with that also be, do more dudes use IMDb than women?
Yeah, I think
Uh,
they do.
Yeah. Well, we'd okay. So we're really gonna have to go deep on this.
Yeah, we really we first figure out what's the breakdown of dudes versus women who rated it, and then how are they representing the population? So then you have to adjust the numbers to actually, yeah. Okay, so for the next half hour, everyone, we're gonna figure out if dudes like this movie more than women, and then we'll talk about. At that point, you'll forget everything, and then we'll
I'm
get into it.
pretty comfortable in my assertion that guys like Gladiator more than women do on average. I'm pretty comfortable in that assertion.
I would back you up on that one, James.
Right.
I don't need hard data for this.
Right, for sure. Now, if
I
you
mean,
can
it
find me
sounds-
hard data, I'm curious by what percentage, but I'm pretty sure I'm right that dudes like Gladiator more than women do. That being said, Gladiator 1, good movie, no matter who you are, I would say. As long as you don't mind some violence. I recently rewatched Gladiator, the extended version, and I don't think I've ever seen the extended version before, but I watched it and there was a lot of blood. Like, I don't remember that much in the original version. Have you guys had experience with the extended version?
I haven't seen it.
I don't
The
think I've seen it.
director's cut? Okay. Yeah, I was kind of surprised, and now I'm curious how much of that's in the original, and I just forgot.
I
And
don't
how
remember
much
the
they just
original
added.
being terribly bloody. It's bloody. I mean, it is sword fights and there's beheadings, so it's not. They don't shy away from it, but I don't remember it being gratuitous. Where like in this Gladiator 2, there was a couple moments where there was a lot of blood.
Sure.
It's pretty
And
gory.
Yeah, I don't remember Gladiator having that amount of blood.
Right. Okay, so the end of Gladiator, just to refresh you, Maximus, played by Russell Crowe, your main character, dies. The mother / sister, who the sister of Joaquin Phoenix's character, what was his Commodus?
Commodus, yeah.
Commodus. She lives, and her son lives, Lucius. Fast forward 15 years later, Gladiator 2 starts. We find out that Lucius is sent off because his mother fears for his life. So he's sent off to go live away from Rome. And while he's away, he's got a brand new life, and he kind of has grown to hate Rome. And he met a girl. They got married right before Rome invaded his new home, as his home of 15 years, presumably. And the general, played by what's his name? Pablo Pascal, orders his girl to be shot with an arrow. She dies. Now he hates Rome and Pedro Pascal. His side loses the battle. Lucius's does, and he becomes a slave, and slave to Denzel Washington, who is a slave trader / politician. I don't know what you'd call him. And then it kind of mirrors the first movie. He kind of works his way to the Colosseum and eventually fights in the Colosseum.
I've done hundreds and hundreds of Cinereelists episodes with James. I can't recall a time where James just kind of goes into a lengthy plot
recap?
description of the movie. Yeah, I've just never heard him do it.
Sure.
Yeah, then he fights some baboons, and then he fights a rhino, and then he fights some sharks.
Oh, we'll get into all that. Meanwhile, in Rome, there's two emperors. two emperors for some reason. And
Twins, right?
Co-emperors.
They're
That happens.
twins.
That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Are they twins or are they brothers?
I
who
thought
are
they were
relatively
brothers.
close.
They're twins. They're twins.
Yeah.
They're actual twins. Okay.
Yes.
Twins.
So there's these
'cause
two
he
twins.
talked about his umbilical cord in the womb.
Right. And they're not
Right.
really like by blood supposed to be emperors. They've just kind of grabbed power and nobody has been strong enough to challenge them on some
Right,
level.
because since we're just going to say it, Lucius is supposed
Missing.
to be aligned for the throne, but
Right.
he's AWOL.
Do you
Well,
want to know a
the-
fun fact?
The mother was
Mark-
in line too. She just wasn't doing anything about it. She couldn't. Like they were saying, the Senate was like, you should be
Kind
in
of.
power right now. Yeah. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Zach. Fun fact.
Marcus Aurelius, the emperor that Commodus's father, the one that he killed,
Mhm.
Right.
He was the one that reinstituted heir by your
Bloodline.
children.
Right,
Interesting.
because before that, emperors would just adopt who they wanted the heir to
Yeah.
be.
Right.
To make it like, they're my child now.
And so Marcus Aurelius changed it so that Commodus would become emperor.
And then
Anyways.
he killed him.
No, but
in
Commodus
real
did not
life
kill
he didn't.
Marcus Aurelius, but no.
But in the
I-
Gladiator movie, he killed his dad.
Yeah,
Right.
in Gladiator movie, yes.
Right.
And I think we should just say right now, like, don't base your Roman history on Gladiator movies.
Really? That's where I get all my history.
Yeah, that's a problem, James. Yeah, I keep looking for Maximus on Wikipedia. He just doesn't pop up anywhere.
Sure. Okay, so that's the baseline for the plot
Anything else you want to add to the plot, James?
for Gladiator 2 and a recap of Gladiator 1. What'd you guys think of the new movie? Was it worth the wait?
Well, first of all, have you read up on the original like sequel script that was written a long time ago?
The one that Nick Cave had about Maximus going to the underworld?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell James about it because it's pretty
So,
wild.
Nick
so
Cave,
Russell
the music
Crowe-
artist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Russell Crowe was like, saw the success of Gladiator and he's like, they're going to make a sequel, but I kind of died at the end of it. And so I'm not going to be in the sequel. So maybe before anyone else writes a script, I should, get my own script going so that, I can have my foot in this a little bit.
Mhm.
And so he hired Nick Cave to write a script and he said, I got to be in it. And so
Hmm.
Nick Cave came up with this script and it was like, it starts with him in the underworld because he died.
Mhm.
And he like meets all the like pantheon of gods or whatever and gets sent back to Earth. And now he's immortal. And there's a series of different things that happens, but the movie ends with him like fighting through every war in like world history,
Yeah.
with like ending in him fighting in Vietnam. This is Maximus right now fighting in
Mhm.
Vietnam. And then finally he's like Secretary of State and he's like in the bathroom, like washing his face with water or whatever, and goes into the war room. And then that's how the movie ends.
Sounds awesome. I would love to see that movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Wouldn't
a totally
you?
different movie than this. I'd
I
be
mean,
interested.
I we'll get into it, but like at least that would have been different in interesting ways. Whereas I feel like maybe Gladiator 2 is not different in interesting ways.
But sharks, James.
I don't know. What'd you guys think of it?
I mean, so you asked the question, was it worth the wait?
Sure.
And I will say I was never clamoring for Gladiator 2.
Me neither.
So was it worth the wait? No, because I didn't want it in the first place, personally. And I don't think this movie was especially amazing.
Wouldn't
Did
that
I
mean
have-
it was worth the wait? Because you weren't waiting for it. So like you had nothing invested
No.
in it.
It wasn't worth the wait.
It wasn't worth the wait.
But
So
you
that
weren't
means it's
waiting.
Not.
You weren't waiting for it though. You didn't.
I wasn't waiting in the first place, but then when
But
I
had he been waiting, it wouldn't be worth it.
But then when I saw it, I wasn't like, oh wow, I can't believe I was going to miss out on Gladiator 2. Like I saw Gladiator 2, I'm like, oh, okay.
Sure.
In the theater, was I enjoying myself? Yes, there's a lot of bigness in this movie,
Mhm.
right? And some of the bigness, like Denzel Washington, great addition, right? His character went big at times. You're shaking your head.
Go ahead.
Okay, his character went big sometimes, and I kind of like Denzel Washington going big.
All right.
The twin emperors going big, didn't really care for that whatsoever. They were so coded as the bad guys, like with their pale skin and their sunken eyes. I was like, wow, can we make these guys the bad guys any harder than we're already trying?
Why you gotta talk about their sunken eyes?
I know, right?
No, like they did like the dark makeup around their eyes to like,
Okay.
make them look anemic and,
Sure, strung
less
out.
than human. Exactly.
Yeah.
I miss Joaquin Phoenix or a performance of that level. Like Joaquin Phoenix goes big in
Mhm.
Gladiator, but he's having so much fun doing it, and he's so almost charismatic as he's doing it. Right, where you see him as he's an awful emperor, but you can also see kind of like how this guy could become emperor.
Mhm.
And then I'm watching these twins. I'm like, well, I don't understand how these guys became emperor whatsoever. Like who handed them the keys to the city of Rome?
Well,
Sure.
people that thought they could control them.
Yes, but we don't
Like-
see. I mean, we don't see any of that puppet mastery. Like maybe Denzel
We
Washington
definitely do.
is.
Yeah, Denzel.
Okay, Denzel does, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But they're already in
Um,
power by the time Denzel gets there.
Right,
Yeah,
he's
we
just
don't-
literally-
the previous Denzel.
Gotcha.
so like the 15 years before Denzel.
Yeah.
I really want someone to recut Gladiator and just like Photoshop Denzel into the background of all the scenes of just like watching, yeah. Like the
Sure.
whole time.
Biding
Anyway.
his time.
Yeah, so I think for me, I guess I'm saying plot wise, this one just seemed chaotic and a little overdone. Where if you think about the first Gladiator, it's fairly simple, right? You have Maximus, he's betrayed, his family is killed, and then he is just working his way through the gladiator ring to get his revenge.
Mhm.
And that's the movie. Where this movie, it starts the same. He's betrayed, his family gets killed, he works his way through the gladiator ring, but then he has a change of heart, and then politics happen, and then he must, fight for the bigger cause. And that to me felt a little overdone. Where he had his big confrontation with what we thought was his nemesis, and I was like, oh, there's still like an hour of this movie left. Like,
Mhm.
what's going to happen for the rest of this movie? We can talk about the action too. Some of the action was great. Like that sea battle at the very beginning. I thought that was great. That was, for me, classic Ridley Scott going big. It made me want to, it made me wish he did like some of the Master Commander movies, because I thought like the sea battles were really cool.
Mhm.
But then on the other side, and James, we kind of talked about this beforehand. I think maybe it was off podcast. I said to you, I was concerned there's gonna be a bunch of like just CG mumbo jumbo in this movie.
Mhm.
And you've got the rhino, you've got the sharks, which again is a cool sea battle. But I'm like, why do we have sharks in here? And then those baboons
We're
were
awful.
atrocious. That one of the worst things I've seen on screen in the 21st century. Like-
wow.
they were so bad.
I mean, they weren't that bad, but they weren't good.
I don't know what you're talking about. Why were they bad? They looked terrifying.
But they didn't look like baboons at all. Like they had maybe a baboon-like face. Their bodies were much more dog-like. Like they didn't move like an ape or a human. They moved like a four-legged creature.
Okay, so you thought, I'm just trying to get in your head. You
Right.
thought they were like poorly designed or rendered baboons that like didn't look real, like real animals.
They didn't look like real animals. They didn't move like real animals. And their proportions were not that of real animals.
For the
That's
record,
interesting.
I agree with Kyle.
Thank you.
Okay. No, great. And I'm not a baboon expert. Okay. So I'm going to claim that right now.
Okay.
So this is all just my baboon opinions. But I felt that this is exactly what a baboon would look like if it was like hairless, underfed, hungry, and ferocious. Like this looked to me like a malnourished baboon that I would expect in a gladiatorial conflict.
Okay. I'm thinking about like the first Gladiator when there's tigers.
Mm-hmm.
I believed he is fighting a tiger, whether it was a real tiger or a CG, like on a green suit. The whole
Yeah.
time, like, oh yeah, Maximus is fighting tigers.
Mhm.
And I'm watching this movie, And I'm like, A, I don't know what he's fighting, and B, he's fighting a guy in a green costume who's rolling around on the ground. Like, I didn't find the interactions between him and the baboons believable. That whole baboon fight, I was rolling my eyes hard.
Yeah, there's something about fighting CG characters, like fist fighting them and stuff like that, like physically wrestling them, where it just doesn't look real. It just doesn't. It doesn't look like you're two solid objects.
But right, it looks like he's wrestling with the air. Like, he's just miming it. And
Right.
then, like, we'll paint it in later. Don't worry.
And so I felt zero impact. I understand why it's there. I know why the apes, the rhinoceros, the water battle in the Colosseum, it's all there because they didn't want to do another 45 minutes across the runtime of the whole film of just dude versus dude, which is what they did in the first movie. So they're like, we got to jam this with stuff that people haven't seen. But I mean, let's be honest, dude versus dude was way cooler. I could have used more of that and less of these other shenanigans. People love the first movie and it's just dude versus dude. Why not just give them more of what they love?
They have chariots in the first movie. Like, you can have riders. You could make it large spectacle with people. But he chose not to. He chose to go, oh, well, we need more exotic animals. And like the sea battles, did that actually happen? Yes. The sea battle scene did not bother me. Like, I thought it was kind of a retry at the beginning, but it was kind of cool to see like a Colosseum sea battle. The sharks,
right?
It didn't add any stakes to it. Like, I wasn't ever worried that our hero was going to fall in the water and get eaten by a shark. It was just like, oh, well, it'll be fun to see some extras get picked off by a shark. Where like the tiger, that had stakes to it, I was like, oh, there's a freaking tiger in this pen. Like, obviously, my character's not going to die because he's the main guy, but I still feel like there's some danger there.
I also felt like the original movie, and I hate to compare it constantly, but we're going to. It's
fine to compare. It's called Gladiator 2, right? Like, this isn't some other Gladiator movie. Like, this is the sequel to Gladiator.
Lucius Revenge. Gladiator
exactly.
Lucius
That
Revenge.
is very much a retread of the original, so it's okay to compare the two.
Right. I felt like the battles in the original Gladiator helped tell the story of the characters, and the battles in this movie were just an obligation to get to the more political backroom scheming. Like, when Maximus was in the Colosseum, when he was in these fights in the early days, you were worried for him. You were interested in him. He was a mystery, and through these battles, you got to know him. He barely even talks in that movie when he's not in a battle. Other people kind of talk around him, and he says like a few lines here and there. He doesn't ever say like full paragraphs unless he's like giving a pep talk to a group of other dudes. And in this movie, it seemed more about the spectacle of whatever they could do in the Colosseum than actually progressing characters over the course of a fight, with the exception of the Pablo Pascal, Lucius fight.
Pedro Pascal
fight.
Chiwetel Elijah 4.
It, that was probably my biggest downgrade or criticism. My biggest criticism of the movie was just like the battle scenes. It just seems so gimmicky when you don't really need that gimmick. The original Gladiator proved it 24 years ago. You don't need those gimmicks. Just put somebody who's trained to make it look cool in the ring. Give him a bunch of big dudes with cool armor to fight. Throw a couple of realistic animals in the mix, and you got a fun sequence. But
I agree that the original's fight scenes were like cooler, but like when I hadn't seen the trailer, when that rhino showed up, I was like, "That's cool. He's got to find a rhino." You know what I mean? I was excited about that.
But then he
was
didn't
it
even
cool
fight
once
a
the
rhino.
fight started, or was it just cool when the rhino came in? Like, did the fight live up to what you thought it was going to be when that rhino walked in?
No, at a certain point, the rhino just kind of stood around, did nothing.
Yeah.
He left the fight pretty quickly. I'm just
Apparently,
saying. I was like,
if you
I
want to
was excited
disorient a
there's
rhino, just throw some dust in the air, and then the rhino will be like, "Oh, I don't know what's going on."
But that did move the character along, right? That's the first time we saw him pick up dust, and
which he did
his mom.
over and over and over again. This
true.
guy
One time it
is
was,
like
like,
obsessed
really-
with dust.
One time it was
Well,
like really rocky, and I was like, ugh, I don't want to have that on my hands.
Yeah.
It was too
Yeah, I thought it'd be
rocky and
sandier
wet.
than that.
Yeah, I thought
Like,
it was going to
just,
be sandier too.
Imagine the contusions and scrapes you're getting rolling around on that stuff.
Being a gladiator is dangerous, contusion wise. Okay, so Kyle, it seemed like you didn't really like it.
No, what I'm saying is, like, in the theater, I was kind of like, okay, I'm enjoying this for the most part. There's some dumb things happening, but I didn't leave this movie being like, I'm so glad I saw this, or like, wow, thank goodness we got Gladiator 2.
Yeah.
I left this movie kind of feeling like, well, this was a bit pointless and unnecessary.
Right. I think that's my like overarching issue with it is like Gladiator is a best picture winner from 24 years ago. Why are we sequelizing it now? Why?
I imagine money plays a role in it.
Sure, but it just seems like maybe that's the only reason to do it, really? Like there was nothing on screen that screamed to me other than money. This is why Tony Scott is doing this.
Ridley Scott?
Ridley Scott.
Chiwetel Elijah 4.
First names are really challenging for you today, James.
Ridley Scott. This is why. Like,
Okay.
like there was nothing in here where I was like, okay, this twist, this is probably what got in his brain, and he couldn't get it out of his brain. No, I think I'm pretty sure money and
Oh, yeah.
opportunity. I'm sure people were
Right.
like, hey, you want to make Gladiator 2? We can find money for it. He's like, sure, I don't have to fight for this one. Let's do it.
But like, what, Ridley Scott's 80 years old?
Yeah. And he's spitting out movies like he's headed out the door.
Yeah, like I want more Martians from him. Like, I want Gladiator 2s.
They're
or
coming like
Alien Covenants or whatever.
They're coming like once a year at this point.
He's
Let's
just
see.
okay, maybe we'll get another Martian. Like if I could get one more, maybe not masterpiece, but if I could get one more Martian level movie from Ridley Scott, I'd be so happy.
His output is insane right now. Since
Right,
2021, he's released 4 movies.
Right, he did House of Gucci. He has this one.
Last Duel, Napoleon, and then Gladiator 2.
Oh yeah, Last Duel. That was my favorite movie of that year. That was a great movie.
Yeah, so I didn't like the apes. There's something about two guys clashing, or a guy clashing against 10 guys. It's just like men fighting men that hits harder to me, like emotionally, like stakes wise, versus a guy fighting a CG army of animals. It's just not
Right.
the same thing. Like not only is it not the same thing visually, it's not the same thing like emotionally, because two guys fighting is like the same thing you can see in the parking lot of a Pizza Hut at midnight.
What kind
You know
of
what I mean?
pizza Are you going to?
I'm just saying, like, two guys fighting is like, that's a primal thing that like is
Right.
universal, right? Even though I'm a nonviolent person, never been in a fight in my life, when I see two guys fight, it hits me different than a guy fighting a baboon. Those are two different things in my brain.
Yeah.
And in this movie, it started with that. And eventually it got down to two guys fighting here and
I'd
there.
rather fight a guy than a baboon, to be honest.
I agree. That's why I'm saying, like, just get rid of the baboons. Who cares about that?
I don't know. I think I could fight a baboon.
Honestly,
No.
if they had gotten rid of the baboons and had him fight other gladiators, and then we had the rhino moment, and then we had the naval battle sequence, I would have accepted the rhino and the naval battle sequence better if we had at least one gladiator fight where it's just men. But we didn't really get that, except for the one between Pedro and Lucivius or whatever his name was.
Lucius.
Poor James.
James, repeat after me. Person, man,
Man.
No.
camera.
Okay.
Camera,
Yeah, thank you.
TV.
So let me share a little bit of my thoughts of this movie. I've only weighed in on the baboons.
Please.
This movie's clearly not as good as the original Gladiator, obviously. During the movie, I was having a fine, tepid response to it, I would say. But listening to you guys, I guess I feel like defending it more, which I'm surprised by my reaction.
Please do.
But this movie is better than a pointless "why does it exist" money grab. It's like for a couple things. One, a lot of sequels, especially ones that are so far away from the original, do not capture like the look and feel of the original at all. And this one I felt by and large did. It did not feel like I was watching, like a Alice in Wonderland CGI fest. It felt very much in the same world as Gladiator 1. Now, I haven't watched Gladiator 1 in like 10 years, so maybe it doesn't. James, you can weigh in on that if they felt very
I would say
different.
it does visually and even like the cutting to black and white memory type stuff. It was in line.
Which is great. And it's not what we get from like Indiana Jones sequels and like all these legacy
Like Dial of
sequels.
Destiny things.
Yeah, they look different. They don't recapture the same kind of look and feel to it. This one had a lot of like political intrigue, and I love like political intrigue, like Roman history stuff. I think that's all really fun. I liked the two idiot emperors, Ed Sheeran twins. That's how I think of Roman history, really, is like just buffoons like that. And I like the machinations of Denzel Washington and how he's this, conniving, striver kind of guy. It's interesting. I thought the main gladiator character, Lucius, was pretty lackluster, maybe. I mean, he seemed like he would be in like a rom-com more than like a gladiator movie. He just seemed like a bro.
Paul
Like,
Mescal?
I don't know. What's that?
That's Paul Mescal, the actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just, I don't know. He didn't have the same gravitas that Maximus did.
No, he didn't have like the charm or the, follow me leadership skills that Russell Crowe's Maximus did.
Yeah. He had a love interest at the beginning, which was completely pointless. And it should not have been in the movie.
They had to give him a reason to hate Rome, and specifically his
But he already
mom's
hated
boyfriend.
Rome.
Yeah, but
Sure,
he needed a person to hate. Like he hated Rome,
Right.
and now he needed a person. And they didn't want to fridge the girlfriend, so like, okay, well, we'll make her. She also died in battle instead of like she got crucified at a farm somewhere.
Right.
Right.
But he couldn't just hate the general because he destroyed his city that he loves. That's not good.
Oh.
He had to like shoehorn in this like silly romance that lasts for 5 minutes.
No, I guess I'm agreeing with you that
Mhm.
it wasn't necessary to have like a 5-minute romance at the beginning.
Yeah.
But right, they needed to give him a reason, like a specific hatred to focus.
Yeah. So in general, I thought this movie was worth seeing. I'm not super excited about it, but it's definitely not as good as Gladiator. But like a lot of elements are fun in there, and it's fun to get the music again when it comes in, and just see like how crazy Rome was back in the day.
Having rewatched the original movie recently, I forgot just how much the score to Gladiator sounds like the score to Pirates of the Caribbean.
Well, there's a reason for that.
I know. Same
Okay.
Same guy does the music for both of them.
No, different guy.
I thought they're both Hans Zimmer.
No, Hans Zimmer did the score to Gladiator,
Okay.
and then his apprentice, Jan. No, I can't remember pronounce his name. His apprentice did the music to Pirates, and he took a small motif from Gladiator and kind of made that the main Pirates theme.
That makes sense. But then in Gladiator 2, they dropped the main theme from Gladiator.
Well, And that's because Hans Zimmer got sued by the Gustav Holst family for ripping off Mars, the bringer of war, for the Gladiator theme. So that's why
Interesting.
they had
Okay.
it's kind of crazy.
I thought it was maybe because they didn't want people to think they ripped the music from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Well, I mean that could have been it too, but I think there was some lawsuit issues over the music to
Sure.
Gladiator 1.
To be honest, I'm not too far off from Zach's opinion. which is that Gladiator 1 categorically better. Gladiator 2, I'm kind of glad it exists, even if I think there's a bunch of lameness here and there in it. It's not an unwatchable movie.
Right.
One of my favorite parts of the movie is the stuff that is new, like Denzel Washington's character. I like the idea of that character. I like the execution of that character. I didn't dislike Denzel in the role. I was distracted by Denzel in the role just because it's Denzel Washington. And like when he goes big.
Oh, that was Denzel Washington?
Yes, that was Denzel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
that
know. He
explains
just
a lot.
disappeared for you. I can tell. But
wow.
for me, every time I saw him on screen, I was like, it's Denzel in a robe. I was never like, oh, he's this character and he's evil or anything. I just saw him as an actor doing a job. And maybe that's more on me than the movie itself. But I also, sometimes Denzel would say things that, not to harp on the historical accuracy even more, but it reminded me that he was Denzel and not a character in a movie set in Rome a long time ago.
Yeah,
he would say things that just, at one point towards the beginning of the movie, and this was around the time that the apes happened, which already annoyed me. He said, hose him down and bring him to me.
Hose him down. Yes.
And I was
remember,
like, did they have hoses?
I don't think
They don't have hoses. Plus, hose him down is like, that's like slang. That even if they had hoses, many, many years afterwards, somebody came up with hose him down. That was not a thing in ancient
now,
Rome.
there's a possibility the Romans had hoses. They did have water pressure. So I don't want to say they didn't have hoses. But yeah, the phrase hose him down, I don't think it's been translated from Latin 2,000 years ago.
Right. So it's, again, I understand Gladiator is not a history book, but there were just like a sequence of things that would occasionally take me out of it. Now, when I saw Gladiator, I didn't know who Russell Crowe was. I didn't know who Joaquin Phoenix was. These were like relatively unknown people to me. And so there was nothing to distract me. So again, maybe it's a me problem. Maybe if I didn't know what Denzel Washington looked like, I'd never seen a single Denzel Washington movie, then I wouldn't have been as distracted by him on screen. But I was definitely distracted by him personally.
But like Gladiator was a breakthrough role for, again, both Joaquin and Russell Crowe. And I don't think this was a breakthrough for anyone. Like, definitely not Paul Mescal.
Yeah. I could see Denzel getting like a supporting actor nomination off this, though.
Right. But like, he's Denzel. He didn't break through. Like, it's not like we discovered him in Gladiator 2. Like, you know.
We didn't, but maybe somebody did.
Someone might have.
He's going places.
Yeah.
Remember
especially
that name.
at the Denzel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like at the end, when he said, King Kong ain't got nothing on me, I was like, okay, come on. This is.
Is Denzel like the only, maybe Tom Cruise. I'm trying to think, like, Denzel's never been in anything other than like movies for adults, right?
Like a kid movie?
He's never been in a kid's movie. He's never voiced
He might have been the voice
a
of a
cartoon. I can't think of one unless it's like a DreamWorks movie that I'm not thinking of.
Yeah, I can't think of like a Denzel family movie though.
Right. He never did like the dad comedy thing or anything like that. I think most of them are pretty straightforward adult focused movies. Whereas like a Tom Hanks did, lighter fare, mixed it in.
I mean, Tom Hanks started with lighter fare.
Right. That's true.
He was in Happily Ever After as Humpty Dumpty.
What is that?
Happily Ever After?
I don't know what that is.
It's an animated movie?
Yeah.
What year? Wait, I'm going to guess 2006.
I don't know.
It doesn't have the year next to it.
No.
What kind of website are you on?
1989.
Oh, so that was
89.
pre-fame
Oh,
Denzel.
okay. Like
Pre-fame. He wasn't famous in 89?
Malcolm X.
I think he's a 90s guy,
Well,
mostly.
Glory. He was in Glory. That was
Right, but
89.
It's not like, hey, let's go see the Denzel
Did he win an
Washington
Oscar
movie,
for Glory?
I thought it was Malcolm X. No, he did not. I don't know what he won an Oscar for. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I don't know either. I feel like maybe that was his breakout role, his supporting role
Was
in Glory.
Glory, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. That was like the one where they were like, oh, let's put this guy in a bunch of movies.
Yeah, he got Best Supporting Actor
One
He did
or
not win
nominated?
for Malcolm X, correct?
in 1990.
Yeah, for Glory.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pre-fame. Right? For Happily
Yes.
Ever After. Whatever that
But then
movie
he
is.
got his Oscar. He's like, I'm just doing adult stuff from now on.
Right.
I got to see Happily Ever After.
You have to.
Yeah. A lot of people in it. Dom DeLuise.
All right.
That's your leading line right there. Dom DeLuise is in it.
Malcolm McDowell.
Okay.
Phyllis
Okay.
Diller. Tracy Ullman. Zsa Zsa Gabor. Carol
Oh,
Channing.
Jaja. Yeah.
These are all people I wouldn't mind being in a movie I watch, but not a movie that I have to watch because they're in it.
Well, we all know Zach's a Zsa Zsa Gabor completionist. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, the sad truth is that I didn't hate this movie. I kind of enjoyed it. I had fun watching it. I stuffed my face with popcorn and soda and left the theater thinking, well, that one's not winning Best Picture.
Nope.
But I was entertained, which I guess is the point of these, right?
we should have started with is the question, were you not entertained?
I wasn't not entertained.
I'm not entertained.
But also, like, I thought Gladiator was better than just, mindless entertainment. But that's kind of what I got in this one.
I was also very sleepy while I was watching it.
Which made you enjoy it more?
No. I just assumed I would have enjoyed it more had I not been sleepy.
It's
Did
going to
you
be
nod off at all?
Probably.
Okay.
It's going to be amazing when we get to the star rating and Kyle and I rate it higher than Zach did.
No, I'm going to predict right now we're all giving it the same star rating. It's going to be across the board.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to triple bingo on this one.
We should say our star rating at the same time.
Okay. Do it.
Just to make sure nobody cheats. Anything else spoiler free with Gladiator 2 that we must say?
I mean, I hardly feel like we need a spoiler section anymore.
Oh, we're going to do it. We promised
Okay.
we're going to do it.
All right. Fair.
Well, I do have to mention in the spoiler section how dumb the ending was. So we need a spoiler section.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, let's letterbox rank this out of 5 stars, all at the same time. 3, 2, 1, go. Say your star rating in 3, 2, 1, 3.5.
3.
3 stars. You didn't say go.
Go was when you say the stars.
No, James, you said 3, 2, 1, go.
And then you went 3, 2, 1. I was waiting for go, and
That's
there was
fine.
no go. And then you said, okay. So, James, what was yours again?
3.5.
3.5. I was 3.
Zach was
And
3.
I'm 3.
Okay.
So
All right.
I'm higher than both you guys.
You're higher. Zach,
Not
you
by
called
much, though.
on James there.
But Gladiator's a 5-star top 100 movie for me.
Me too.
Oh, yeah. Top 100 also. Yeah.
And there's a world where Gladiator 2 could have been that too. And instead, they went for popcorn. And not popcorn mixed with a little bit of art house, which is what I think the first Gladiator is. All right. 2 3s, a 3.5 for Gladiator. Stick around at the end of the episode for spoilers. Spoiler talk. Before we get into our top 10 epic films, Zach's got to get out of here. he has a
Yeah.
plane to catch, and so
Sorry, guys, can't join you.
right. But he's going to run through his top 10 epic films in an epically short amount of time.
Is that cool?
Starting with his number 10.
Yeah, go for
For
it.
sure. Okay, my number 10. So these are epics, right?
Yes.
Right.
And just
How did you define epic?
love it. I think an epic is. I wrote down notes about what an epic was. Okay, so you want to hear?
Yes.
No. Yes.
Large scale, sweeping scope and spectacle.
Okay.
Often focus on a heroic character.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more than just a period piece or an adventure film, right? It's got to have scope, maybe something historical. It's got to have extravagant settings, lavish costumes, a great musical score, usually an ensemble cast.
Okay.
So that's how I was going for epic.
Love it.
Nice.
It doesn't necessarily have to be an action movie.
And it does not have to be historical necessarily.
Not necessarily, but I think all of mine are, and they kind of are.
Okay.
Mhm.
I couldn't think of an epic that wasn't historical rather than, I mean, like there's fantasy epics. So that would be the example, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
I didn't include Lord of the Rings on my list, even though it's incredibly epic, but it's like, it's a fantasy film and it
Mhm.
just feels like genre adjacent. Do you know what I mean?
I understand that. I might disagree
My
with
number
that
10.
later, but
Okay. Okay. My number 10 is Alexander Nevsky. Which is a
good.
yeah. Have you seen it?
Yeah, go. Yeah, it's a great movie. Go for it.
Yeah. It's a Soviet movie. Made maybe it's pre-Soviet. I don't know my history. 1938. And it's about this Russian prince who fights a Teutonic army, and it's really epic. It's in black and white. But it's like beautiful and super, awesome action and just momentum. So I like it. Alexander Nevsky from 38. Number 9
the
is
Teutonic
Ron.
army literally throws babies into fire in
Yeah.
that movie.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
They're pretty evil.
Pretty evil. Yeah.
Yeah. Next is Ron. That's my number 9. That's a Kurosawa film about in medieval Japan. It's like a warlord has 3 kids. It's a retelling of Shakespeare. Super great. If you haven't seen Ron, you would like Ron, James, if you haven't seen it.
I watched it for this list.
Oh, really? Nice. Did you like it?
Yes. It didn't make my top 10 list.
Okay. Not enough blood for you?
Other than that, you'll have to wait for, I don't know, a top 10
All right.
last 10 or something.
All right. Number 8 is Lawrence of Arabia. Definitely epic. Number 7, Apocalypto. I feel like this movie doesn't get talked about as much as it's really good. I mean, it's got some like gimmicky stuff, like it's only in original languages and all that kind of stuff. But like it's pretty awesome and well crafted and well done. And like we never get to see those societies on film very often. And it was pretty cool to see. Number 6 is 7 Samurai. Another Kurosawa film.
Mhm.
Number 5, Gone with the Wind.
Okay.
Classic. Yeah.
Super epic. Number 4, Hero, which I really, really, really like Hero.
The Jet Li movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
I feel like when we first started the podcast, like the first 4 years, you talked about Hero constantly.
Yeah.
Then you just stopped talking about it.
Well, I just haven't seen it in so long. I'm sure I should rewatch it and love it again. You know,
Is
but it's
is
really
there?
good.
There's not a 4K release of that. Like that would look amazing on 4K.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm waiting.
Oh, can I tell you a very brief aside about 4K?
Please.
Sure.
I just bought 4 security cameras, and because we have HD cameras,
Mhm.
and these were like a Black Friday deal, and they were 2K, and I was like, okay, well, an upgrade, you know, from I can't afford the 4K, but I can at least get the 2K, and then I got them, and I was like, let me look up 2K. So HD is 1920 by 1080,
Yeah.
and 2K is like 2100 by 1080.
So it's just a slight upgrade from HD.
Yeah. It's incredibly similar to HD.
Bummer.
I was like, that is marketing right there. That is well
Yeah.
done. Anyways, number 3, Saving Private Ryan.
Oh yeah.
Which again is epic. I mean, it's so modern that it doesn't feel right necessarily to call it an epic. But in 300 years, there'd be no reason not to call it an epic. So I'm gonna declare it now. Number 2 is Gladiator. That movie's a 5-star movie. It's awesome. It's so cool. It's definitely an epic. It's sweeping in big scope and all the things I mentioned. Gladiator has. Same with my number 1, Braveheart. Braveheart is like a perfect movie in every capacity, and I love it. And so it's my number 1.
Imagine if Lucius had the charisma of William Wallace.
Charisma?
Yeah, I mean,
charisma. Sorry. It doesn't matter.
Chiwetel Ejiofor.
You can say charisma. That's a word. That's just a different way to pronounce
charisma.
Yeah.
Zach, come on. You be the umpire here. Charisma? That is not an alternative way. Alternative.
I just want to understand. I want to understand what he's asking. Are you saying it's a valid pronunciation, or it's like able to be said with the human tongue? Like, what is your your question?
I think charisma is a valid pronunciation. I know charisma is maybe the accepted pronunciation, but I think
gotcha.
We have charismatic. We don't say charismatic. We say charismatic.
Okay, so you're saying it's like it's a acceptable pronunciation. It's just maybe a minority pronunciation.
Yeah. Why do every minority?
That's certainly wrong. Yeah, that's definitely wrong. But no shame in that. That's my list. Okay. And I can't wait to hear you guys' list.
What a charismatic list you have.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, you can't twist that one.
No, definitely can't. All right, so we're going to dip to black here, and we'll see Zach next week. Bye, Zach. All right, next up is our top 10 epic films list, which should be an interesting one, just because the term epic film or movie epic, or however you want to say it, is kind of a nebulous descriptor, I would say.
It's hard to find a solid definition of what makes an epic movie.
Right. Was there like a definition that you kind of landed on as a guideline?
I looked for a couple key things.
Okay.
Number one, it has to. I guess probably 2 key things for me for an epic. It has to have a story that's large in scope.
Okay.
So oftentimes epics are adventure movies. I think they're not always the case.
Mm-hmm.
I do have some non-adventure movies on my list, but they must tell a big story, right? And this could be a story that either involves lots of characters or a story that takes place over periods of time. And there's a lot of just building of that story in an epic. So that's my first criteria. And my second criteria is it has to have generally a large cast, either a cast of thousands or like a very large ensemble cast. And for the most part, oftentimes epics have big names in that ensemble cast. That wasn't so much a criteria that I used, but more of a large cast, a large ensemble cast.
You mean
or
like
a cast of thousands?
You mean like big stars?
I think oftentimes epics are also blockbusters, if that's a word to put it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so I think a lot of epics have big stars in them.
Gotcha.
But that wasn't a hard criteria for me.
Just a soft criteria.
It's something I considered, yes.
Okay.
How about yourself? How did you define an epic?
Similarly, for sure. I mean, mine are kind of ranked by how much they fit the criteria. So there's like some towards the bottom that maybe don't fit quite as well. So it's less. It's a list of movies I like, for sure. Like there's nothing on my list that I don't like, for sure. It's more just like a list of movies that I like in order of how much I think they fit the description of an epic, being like a big budget movie, a large cast, possibly spans a long period of time. Maybe you follow one character over a lifetime or something like that. These could all be indications that this is an epic film. Also, like big budget, even if it's big budget for the time. And kind of like what's the word? When you're really going for something.
Like a big swing.
Yeah, not a big swing like in that you could have a big swing that's also a small movie. It's more like a bit like a grand vision.
Okay, yeah.
Or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, you're operating on a higher level from every aspect. You know, the amount of money you're spending, the amount of crew you're putting on screen, the length of the movie, all of these things there just has to you're operating on a different level. That's the most base way I can put it. For sure.
Yeah, you mentioned length of the movie, and I would say the majority of my movies, they all come in over 2 hours, and many of them come in over 3 hours.
Right.
So epics don't tell a tight 90.
Typically not, for sure. You want to go first?
I'd love to go first, yeah.
Do it.
All right. My number 10 is actually a movie that I was thinking of as we were watching Gladiator 2, especially that opening battle. It made me kind of wish that maybe Ridley Scott had a chance to take a crack at these movies. And that is Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. This is directed by Peter Weir. But this came out in 2003, just 3 years after Gladiator, also starring Russell Crowe. And this is the story of a British Royal Navy, the captain of the British Royal Navy, played by Russell Crowe, and how he kind of keeps getting in conflict with these French warships and sort of these large scale epic naval battles that happen throughout this movie, as well as the relationships he has with his crew. And I would say this is maybe on the smaller side of an epic because you don't have casts of thousands because this all takes place on ships. So you have casts of hundreds, but the battles are large scale. The story takes place over, half the world because they are kind of traveling around the seas. And it has this sense of largeness to it, even if it is maybe not, thousands of people running through the desert on camels.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it definitely has like a grand presentation.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Big naval battles, lots of cannons firing and, waves crashing. And it really gets you into these moments.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure it has to do with money, but I wonder why they didn't make even more of this. Because isn't it based on like a book series? And
it's a book series. Yeah. Master Commander's a book series. And it's a rather popular one. My father-in-law's read them all. Yeah, I wonder. I'm assuming these movies are expensive to make, right?
Sure.
Being that it's on the water, lots of CGI. I'd wonder if it just didn't make enough money to justify making more of them. Because I mean, this is 2003 Russell Crowe. This is sort of him at his height.
Absolutely, for sure. Just seems like a well-respected movie. I don't remember how it did though, so maybe that's what's holding it back. Yeah,
I think it's a movie that I skipped because I thought like, oh, this is just like another Russell Crowe action movie. So maybe people were it was too much Russell Crowe saturation at the time.
Sure, could be. My number 10 is Spartacus from 1960. From director Stanley Kubrick. This is a movie I watched because I had to, because it's a Stanley Kubrick movie. It's maybe his most studio movie, I would say.
I mean, it's 100% his most studio movie, right. And it's the movie that broke him on the studio experience.
Stars Kirk Douglas and Laurence Olivier, amongst others. And it's the story of Spartacus. It's kind of a sword and sandals type historical drama with action sequences in it. You're talking 1960s when, action, it wasn't quite as ubiquitous as it is today. And so I'm sure the action scenes in this were very thrilling at the time. Looking back, it's fine. Whatever, It's the best of the time, I would say, probably.
I disagree a little bit with you, but I'll get into it. This may come up later in my list.
Okay. I mean, I like it, but I understand like there's nothing about Spartacus that I can remember that really matters, where I'm like, this is a Stanley Kubrick movie. This kind of feels like every other epic sword and sandals movie from like the 1940s to the 1960s. You know what I mean?
Agree with you there.
Right.
This does not feel like there are a couple scenes that feel like Stanley Kubrick scenes, but overall, yeah, this feels like a 60s epic. I'll agree with you on that one.
Yep. What's his war movie? Wages of Fear?
Paths of Glory.
Paths of Glory. Yeah, Paths of Glory has similar vibes to Spartacus for me, where it's like they're Paths of Glory is a war movie, just like every other war movie, but there's a couple scenes where two characters are having dialogue in like a long extended scene where you're like, okay, this is the Stanley Kubrickness of it, this scene in specific. But then once you get into the actual war scenes of Paths of Glory, they're not like Kubrick's spin on war scenes. They're like other good war scenes, in my opinion.
I kind of disagree with you on Paths of Glory. All right.
Fair enough. But that's how I feel about Spartacus. Like,
okay, fair.
Like there's a couple scenes in there where you're like, okay, this is his style for sure. But then once you get to like the Colosseum scenes and the actual battle scenes, to me, feels like all the other good versions of this.
I'll agree with you on that one.
So Spartacus, my number 10.
Perfect. Great choice. My number 9 is a recent film, actually came out last year. And it may not cross your mind at first when you think of an epic, but to me, this fits all the criteria of large scale story, large cast, telling a big story over a long period of time. And this is last year's Oppenheimer.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the story of J. Robert Oppenheimer and his development of the atomic bomb during World War II. And this movie starts with him sort of we see some, I guess, this movie jumps around in time, right? We're seeing kind of flashbacks of him in college. We're seeing him during the Los Alamos project. We're seeing him post the bomb. So we're given that large span of time, but since this is Christopher Nolan, it's not being told linearly. We're jumping around. We have an enormous cast, right? I mean, if I just read the first 2 lines, Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., Florence Pugh, Josh Hartnett, Casey Affleck, Rami Malek. And then it just goes on from there with names you would keep recognizing as we go down and down and down. Some of them have really large parts. Some are playing minor scientists. And it's telling the story of the atomic bomb, which is a pretty significant part of world history, especially of the 20th century. Also, this movie's just incredibly well done. I've only seen it the one time. It's daunts me a little bit to watch again because it is like 3 hours long. And it's definitely a sensory experience. I saw this in IMAX and I remember just being a little overloaded after it was done. But at no point in this 3-hour movie was I bored. At no point was I confused. And this movie gets a little into the weeds with like physics and quantum mechanics. It gets in the weeds with physics and how the bomb works, but you never feel lost. You never feel stupid as an audience member. So I think this movie is a pretty big accomplishment in both the story it's telling, how it tells the story, and how the audience is able to follow this story, which can be a bit obtuse at times.
Yeah. I hadn't considered it. I like Oppenheimer. I don't think I liked it as much as like some people liked Oppenheimer. Did Oppenheimer win the award for Best Picture? What won?
Yeah. Remember, old Al Pacino came out. The Oscar goes to. I'm opening the envelope. I'm reading the name. Oppenheimer.
I don't remember. But.
Oh yeah. Again, we can go on about how I feel about bringing out old actors to like do the biggest award of the night.
Sure.
It always goes so well.
My number 9 is 7 Samurai from 1954.
Okay. Yep.
This one, I don't remember it having like a super broad scope from a timeline perspective, right? Doesn't necessarily span like decades or anything like that.
No, not decades. Maybe days or a week or so.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But it definitely has some big battles in it. Has kind of like a bigger picture type viewpoint than most
Mhm.
things. Classic samurai movie, the inspiration for many other movies as well. Was there a movie before? Did Seven Samurai rip from another movie? Or was it wholly original?
No. Movies, a lot of westerns, American westerns, ripped from
Ripped from
samurai
it.
movies.
I knew
Yes,
that.
like Magnificent Seven.
Right. But
I don't.
I know Kurosawa, or who was it? I recently watched a movie that was based on King Lear.
Oh, was that Ron or Kagamusha?
It was Ron.
It was Ron. Okay.
I watched Ron for this list.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't make the list, but
Okay.
but I did watch it for this. And I didn't know Seven Samurai took a kind of like a similar approach where he was basically adapting a classic story into the samurai world.
He could be. I Seven Samurai is not Shakespeare, that I know for sure, but
Mhm.
I don't know for sure if it's a classic story that he then adapted. So I can't speak to that.
Sure. Since it's not going to make my list, I did enjoy Ron.
Yeah.
Thought it was cool.
Good.
It was nice that they like color coded the armies for me.
In those huge battles. Yes.
Every soldier has their own flag with their own color on
Yeah.
it. It was
It's kind of like Tenet, where you have like the blue team and the red team. And you know which one's moving forward, which one's moving backwards.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, Seven Samurai, certainly a classic. My favorite Kurosawa movie so far. And my number 9.
Nice. My number 8 is a trilogy, and it's not going to be the first time I'm going to use a trilogy because I think some epics are told over multiple stories, and that's okay. And so this is going to be the Godfather trilogy.
Okay.
But
you haven't even seen part 3.
No, I've seen part 3.
Who hasn't seen? Zach hasn't seen part 3?
Zach hasn't seen part 3.
Okay,
Yeah.
I get you guys confused.
Yeah. I've seen all 3. Obviously, for me and for a lot of people, the first 2 are perfect as is.
Mhm.
The third's unnecessary, but it does add to the scope of it. But even if you look at just the first 2, it is. I mean, this is a mafia movie, but it's about the family and it's about the dynasty and the relationship between the father and the son. And then in the second movie, how the son is now taking over and creating his own dynasty within the mafia. This isn't some small scale like, oh yeah, this like Mean Streets, which is a small scale mafia movie. Like this is the mafia movie that's taking place over generations and having, they're having large impact on the American society, on American politics. You also have a huge cast with Marlon Brando and Al Pacino and James Caan and Diane Keaton and, a bunch of character actors playing in there. So again, there's action in this. There's definitely violence. There's not huge battles. Obviously, you're not having like huge street gangs like Gangs in New York. Would you consider Gangs in New York an epic?
Possibly. I definitely saw it on lists.
You're right. It didn't cross my list for my mind for this list, but right now I'm like, oh, that's kind of an epic in a sense. I mean, it's being a story told over multiple decades and whatnot. So. But yeah, definitely for me, The Godfather qualifies as an epic and is one of my favorite, especially those first 2 movies.
Sure. I will agree that The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 are epics. I don't like the whole trilogy thing.
You don't like all 3 of them? Or you like the fact that I'm including the trilogy?
I don't
as
like
an
grouping
epic?
them.
Well, then you're going to be disappointed a couple more times in this list.
It's fine.
Okay.
Because I think an epic film is different than an epic series.
Yeah, that's fair. Yes, there is.
Like the Godfather movies, I would say the first one,
yeah,
a little less epic than the second one. And the third one I don't think is epic at all.
But it's got a helicopter.
We're using a different version of the word epic.
Epic, here we are.
For
yes.
sure.
Yeah, I will agree. The second one leans more into the large scaleness of it all.
Absolutely. It shows the beginning, the middle, and the end of like a lifetime, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas the first one is kind of like you're introduced to a bunch of these characters. There's a storyline to it, but it's not near as big in scope. And then the third one is like you said, unnecessary.
Could one argue
Mhm.
that what like movies that are series now
Mhm.
possibly would have been 4-hour epics if they were made in the 50s and 60s? And the only thing that's really changed is audience attention span and how we handle movie making.
Maybe.
Okay.
Also, I think nowadays it depends on what they're making, but they kind of already know they want to squeeze more money out of the movies.
Right. Yeah.
So if they're going to adapt a book and there's 4 books, they're going to announce 4 movies.
Right. Instead of trying to squeeze it all into one movie that's 6 hours long.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, or just adapt those 4 books down to like one core story and, run with that.
Yep.
My number 8 is Forrest Gump from 1994.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
This one you wouldn't say this has a cast of thousands, although there are a few scenes that have a lot of extras in them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not exactly battle scenes, which is what a lot of these kind of end up feeling like when you look at movie epics. But it's definitely telling one person's story over the course of time. He's constantly weaving in and out of important moments in history, even if he's not the catalyst for that moment in history.
Yeah.
And yeah, just chronicling the change in society over time through the lens of this one specific character. I think it qualifies at the lower end of a top 10 epics list, and certainly a movie I enjoy. My number 8.
No, it's not a movie that crossed my mind, but I think your definition totally fits that of being an epic.
Thank you.
My number 7 is also a bit of a unique pick, and this is Princess Mononoke from 1997, the Miyazaki film.
Never seen it.
Oh, this is my favorite Miyazaki film.
Okay.
Yeah. So this, I don't know. It takes place in feudal Japan. I can't tell you exactly when it takes place. Not all Miyazaki movies take place in a certain era. Some do. Some are just sort of like, a timeline.
Sure.
This is about a prince who is cursed by a demon god, and he must journey to find a cure for this curse.
Okay.
Along the way, he encounters some humans who are trying to protect the forest, as well as a warlord who's trying to destroy the forest, and he's sort of brought in the middle of this conflict of, good versus evil, man versus nature, technology versus the natural world. And there are, even though it's an animated film, there's large scale battles, there's large gods, there's these, huge ideas and conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
So even though this may not be like a cast of thousands because it's, an animated film, it still has this larger story that's telling. Unlike something like My Neighbor Totoro, which is, about like a girl trying to reckon with grief. This movie is about, like big forces of, big ideas conflicting with each other.
Sure.
It's also got incredible animation. It's PG-13, but I'd say it's a rather violent PG-13. I own it.
Mm-hmm.
Galen keeps asking me to watch it. He's like, but it's a cartoon. I'm like, yeah, but not all cartoons are for kids.
Sure.
And like,
when you're 13, we'll watch it.
Yeah, exactly. We'll watch it. We'll watch it soon. But this is, there's definitely some blood in this movie, and it's one of those movies where if it was live action, it may have been an R rating. But for whatever reason, because it's cartoon, they sort of gave it a pass.
Yeah, I mean, by the time I was 13, 14, I was watching like Ninja Scroll and stuff like that, and that was like like hyper violent.
Yeah, that's super violent. Yes.
Yeah.
This is not Ninja Scroll violent, so maybe at 10 or 11 you could watch this one.
Sure. I'm down to watch it. It's probably the most recommended Miyazaki movie to me. Like when people find out I haven't seen many Miyazaki movies, they're like, "Oh, you should start with this one."
And it was his American breakthrough one too. I think it was the first one that was released in America
in theaters. Yeah.
Yep.
I remember
Tarantino's like a producer on it or something like that.
Well, I thought the Weinsteins bought it, and then they like tried to release it with American actors doing the voiceover, and people like rebelled.
Well, that's how I saw it.
Okay.
Yeah, like I think Claire Danes plays the princess.
Mhm.
I'm gonna be honest. I used to be a purist. I used to watch Miyazaki films and anime films with subtitles. And then after one too many screeching kids, I'm like, I can't do it anymore.
You can't.
It's
manage
a vocal
the
timbre
squeaky
thing.
Squeaky voices. Yeah.
I can't do it. So I now watch with the subs, where I now watch with the American dub, which
It's a major hurdle for me too. The squeaky
Yeah.
voices for some reason.
it is, and I it's a cultural thing, and I know it's my problem. It's not their problem,
Mhm.
but I'd
But
rather
it's a problem one way or
It's
another.
a problem, exactly. And if my solution is to watch it with the American dub, then I will do so.
Sure. I hear you. I have the same issue for sure. Okay, my number 7 is Gladiator from 2000,
Mhm.
which is which I think more time passes in this movie than you really realize. Like he doesn't recognize the son. He doesn't recognize the son.
The son?
So the son of the lady.
Connie Nielsen's son. What's the kid's name?
Vociferous or
No, that's you're thinking of Game of Thrones.
Viscous?
No. Lucius.
Vitalik. Lucius, yes.
Lucius.
He doesn't
yeah.
recognize Lucius. You know what I mean? Which tells me that like the time between when Maximus gets caught as a slave, basically, and,
Right.
and goes up to the gladiator ranks is like a number of years at minimum, I would say.
Right. Most likely he's honing his craft in the whatever, the local gladiator circuit.
Right.
He's doing backyard gladiating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you watch the movie, I'm not sure, unless you're really paying attention, you realize like, oh, this is not a matter of months or weeks or months. This is like years between
Right,
him getting
yes.
caught as a slave and him, showing his face at the major Colosseum. So there's a good deal of passage of time, I guess is what I'm saying. Certainly a movie that's epic in scope from people on screen, visuals, architecture, just the production in general, I think qualifies it for the list. It would be higher had it spanned more time.
Yep.
But as it is, it lands at number 7.
Nice. My number 6 is the previously mentioned Spartacus from 1960, directed by Stanley Kubrick. I agree with a lot of what you have to say. This movie does not feel much like a Kubrick film compared to his other things he was doing. But this movie also taught Kubrick, do your own thing, which I appreciate too. So, where I do disagree with you is when it comes to some of those battles that are happening outside, like the large scale battles. I remember those being pretty cool to watch, especially there's moments where they're rolling I think it's like huge burning logs down a hill.
Mhm.
And then there's guys just at the bottom of the hill being run over by burning logs. And that was something that I felt was unique that I had not seen in a movie before or since. Obviously, we've seen fire. We saw it in Gladiator 2. We see Gladiator. Like fire is a big part of movie making. But to see like huge burning logs rolling down a hill and just running people over, that had a scale of grandiosity that was unique to this movie that I think separates it from a lot of the other epics of this era.
I don't remember that bit, but I've only seen Spartacus once, and it was like
Okay.
6 years ago or so. When did we do the Kubrick special? That was before you were on
Oh,
regularly.
man.
At least 6 years
Yeah,
ago.
Longer than that.
You think?
Maybe. Yeah. Actually, 6 or 7. You're probably right. Yeah.
I need to rewatch it at some point. My number 6. Again, a really great movie, but just not enough time passage, I would say, during it. Titanic from 1997.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
This is epic pretty much in every way other than the passage of time. But the size of the movie making, the bravado of the filmmakers, the cast, just a stacked cast, pretty deep. Tons of extras, just constantly extras through that movie. There's barely a scene where there's not a ton of people in the background somewhere somehow. I mean, they're on a cruise ship, so that makes sense. Yeah, just a big old long disaster story about as expensive as they come circa 1997. And it just needed a bigger scope of story in order to go higher on the list. But as it stands, it's at my number 6.
Nice. My number 5 is probably the mother of all epics. When you say the word epic, this movie comes to most people's minds. It's 1962's Lawrence of Arabia, directed by David Lean. This movie stars Peter O'Toole, as well as Alec Guinness and Anthony Quinn. Alec Guinness in some unfortunate brown face. So is Anthony Quinn. So lots of people in unfortunate brown face.
Pretty much everybody who's brown is doing brown face in this, right?
Yeah, I mean
there's maybe a couple that aren't, but most of the Arab actors in this are actually white guys.
Right. You have Omar Sharif. Omar Sharif is Egyptian.
Sure.
I'll give him that. But yeah, you also have like Anthony Quinn, who is a Spanish American. Jose for a lot of times, if you were not white European, you could play anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you were white European like Alec Guinness, throw a little face paint on you. We'll have you play a sultan anyway. So
this is actually my number 5.
Oh, perfect.
And it was a first time watch for me, and I was distracted by the brown face that was going on.
Yes.
Especially, it wasn't only brown face, it was like all the Arabs in the movie, I'm pretty sure had nose prosthetics as well.
Anthony Quinn for sure. I don't know about Alec Guinness if he had a nose prosthetic or not.
I don't know. Just whenever they would cut to people, I would be like, what are they doing here?
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, it was... Plus, like, I watched like the 4K digital version of it.
Oh, isn't that great though?
It looked amazing until one of those guys was in close up, and then it was very clear how much makeup that they had on. And I'm telling you, I bet multiple people have nose prosthetics.
I would believe it. Unfortunately, I would believe that they would, just to like, make sure they really look like they're of
I don't know,
that whole Middle East area.
I don't know what they're trying to say, because I don't know that many Middle East people, but I've never thought, man, they all have big noses or something like that. I don't know. It's just not a stereotype I've ever heard.
I think it's to differentiate them from just white Europeans.
I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. But as a first time watch for Lawrence of Arabia, I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, it was long. It was like 3.5 hours long.
It is long. Yes.
Also, it really confused me when the movie started with like 4 minutes of black set to music.
Oh, the overture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have thrown up a title card or something. There's nothing. It's just black with music. I thought something was wrong with my my version. And no, that's just the way it is.
No, you have an overture, you have an intermission. They respect the audience.
I know.
They're saying, hey, like, get your popcorn. This is starting soon.
Yeah.
Hey, we're 2 hours into this 3.5 hour movie. Here's a break. Go use the bathroom.
Sure.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
The break was actually like 65% into the movie, which I liked that, because by the time it came to intermission, I just paused it and I was like, oh, we're like over halfway through at the
right.
intermission.
Yeah, you've got. Yeah, it's like a Broadway play. Like you've got acts 1, 2, intermission, and then act 3.
Right.
Or whatever. I don't know.
A long act 3.
I appreciate when the first half is longer than the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, this movie, it's huge. It's T.E. Lawrence uniting the Arab tribes,
Mm-hmm.
fighting the Ottoman Empire, leading to what became modern Middle East, Iraq, Iran, for better or for worse.
Yep.
It's a pretty large story and scope.
I will say that again, as a first time watch, the cinematography in this is amazing. Like the two highlights for me are the cinematography, certainly.
Right.
And the coordination it took. Like there's scenes in here where there's like 100 guys riding camels on the screen at once.
Yeah.
And you're just like, how did you find so many camels? You know what I mean? And like, how'd you get them all to line up like that? And with people riding them, And there's another scene in this that will never be filmed again, where a bunch of horses jump off a train. And by a bunch,
Oh,
I mean
yes.
like 100 horses jump off a train, all kind of like in a row. It's really beautiful and amazing, and they will never make horses do that again on film.
No.
Because I'm sure it's very dangerous for horses to do that. So there's like a couple things in here that showed its age, but I'm glad at some point somebody got it on film. And then the other observation I'll make is that like Mr. Lawrence, the titular Lawrence of Arabia, played by what's his name?
Peter O'Toole.
Peter O'Toole. I just kind of found him a little bit of a drip. Like he just wasn't an exciting person to me.
Really?
Or like all that interesting. The production kept me going, but like him as a character, like you're supposed to like go along on this journey where like he learns about the Arabs and it humanizes them to him, and he becomes kind of a, I don't know. He becomes a part of their group. You know what I mean? He kind of switches sides from the British Empire to the Arab perspective.
It's a bit Dances with Wolves, yes.
For sure. And I didn't buy it.
Okay.
But it's not that his character was doing things that I shouldn't buy. I just didn't feel any care personally for his transition. I never felt he was like super racist to begin with.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And then like a bunch of things happened that changed his mind. It just kind of, he just changed his mind for like no reason.
Okay. And you didn't quite buy him to be like the Messiah that he was, that the people saw him
right
as.
And then at some point like they gave him like Arab clothes and stuff like that, and they're like, I'm Arab now, and it's like, well, that was fast.
He's wearing the head, the shawl and everything,
right. And then when he goes back to Britain in the back half, there's like a bunch of politics around like he thinks Arab people are just like us and we don't think that, and so now we don't like him anymore and stuff. I was just kind of like, can we just go back to the desert, go back to the good cinematography, which they do, you know. And overall I enjoyed it. Clearly my number 5 on this list. I waited to watch it. I was hoping to get to see it in like 70 millimeter for the first time, to watch it for the first time in 70 millimeter in a movie theater.
Yes.
But as time goes on, I'm less and less convinced that'll ever happen. So I decided to watch it specifically for this list. I watched this and ran. The two biggest contenders, I thought, as far as epic movies that might make a list like this that I hadn't seen. And one made it, one didn't. My number 5. And your
perfect.
And your
All
number
right.
6?
My number 5 also.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
What's your number 4?
Bingoed right there.
That's
all right. Well, my number
bingo.
A true bingo. My number 4 is the previously mentioned Gladiator.
Nice.
I remember seeing this in the theater when it came out, and it's a cool movie. I mean, it opens with a big battle. Right? Does it need to open the big battle? No. But it lets you know who Maximus is. It's Ridley Scott showing off. You know, it's got cool catapults and fire and giant barbarians with hammers. Accurate? Probably not, but it's a fun battle to watch.
Sure.
And then I would say, even though this isn't epic, this is kind of a small story in scope. Like the setting is huge, right? With these big gladiator battles. With it is a tale of revenge, but at the same time it's one man wanting his revenge against another man. And he goes through quite the trials to get to his moment of revenge. But at its base, this is a rather simple story. So you could argue in one sense it's not an epic because of the smallness of the story, but I think the largest of the presentation is what qualifies this for me as an epic, as well as just giving pretty incredible gladiator battles. Nothing that we had seen since like Ben-Hur that came out 50 years before this. You know, I would say for the most part, the sword and sandal genre was dying or was dead by the time the 21st century rolled around.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And Gladiator kind of revived it. I mean, we had Troy come after this, and Alexander the Great, and
they made a couple movies of what's the name of those movies? There are other Sword and Sandals movies.
like 300.
Yeah.
Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the
they remade
Titans.
those. Yes,
Yeah, they remade those.
Yep.
There was like 3 Clash of the Titan movies in the modern
Yep.
era that would not have happened if it wasn't for Gladiator. I'm convinced.
No, not at all. Yeah.
So definitely brought it back for sure. My number 4 from 2019, The Irishman.
Oh yeah.
This is I'd say the most epic of the Scorsese movies. I think that's fair.
It definitely covers the biggest amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Goodfellas feels somewhat epic just as a mob movie.
It's a bigger cast.
You're right. And it is focusing on one guy's kind of rise and fall.
Mhm.
But yeah, the Irishman is sort of one guy's career.
I mean, basically his entire lifetime in crime.
Yeah, exactly.
From the initial act to the retirement home.
Yes.
Starring Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, Harvey Keitel. A bunch of people are in this movie for sure.
Ray Romano.
Right. I mean, what is there to say that I didn't just say? It's a crime story. It's like, what if The Godfather was just a normal guy? You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
In like a crime family. He was never the boss. He was just a normal guy. Just a minion basically. And over time you follow his life and his regrets and his victories and all of those types of things. And that's what The Irishman was. A good one that I need to rewatch for sure. I haven't seen it in a while. And I only watched it the once, and mostly it's the runtime.
It's a 3.5 hour runtime. Yep. That's
209
can
minutes.
Be a turnoff. Yeah.
It's one of those things where you got to kind of go into it like it's a TV show where you're like, I know I'm not going to watch this in one sitting. I'm just going to accept that before I hit play.
Yep. And know we're going to break it up, and that's okay.
Right. An hour and a half in, I'm going to hit pause. We'll come back to this another day.
Yep. Awesome. All right. My number 3 is a epic from 1995, directed by Mel Gibson, called Braveheart. I almost said directed by William Wallace.
I heard that.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is the story of William Wallace, the Scottish revolutionary, as he is leading a revolt against the British in the, I think this is late 12th century, if I'm correct. And this movie has everything you'd want from an epic. It has a charismatic lead, right, where you found Mr. Lawrence himself, maybe not as charismatic. You're like, why is everyone following this guy? You know why people following William Wallace.
Sure.
Right. The minute he gives his war cry, you're like, yes, we will follow you into death, into battle. This is a story that takes place over many years as he's fighting the British. Huge battles involving horses and pikes and armies clashing with each other. I remember, as a teenager, seeing this movie and having not seen something like that on screen before. This tells a big story about an outsized personality, both their rise and their fall. Historical accuracy be damned.
Mm-hmm.
This movie feels like an epic. It is interesting. I did have a friend, a coworker, watch this for the first time.
Okay.
And she was like, it looked a little dated.
And
I just wondered, under that modern lens of, 30 years ago.
Sure.
If the battles have not evolved or not. So I haven't watched the movie in a while, but I remember the battles looking pretty epic even when I saw this a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't consider it dated, but it's been a little bit since I've seen it.
Yeah. I mean, it did come out 30 years, so.
Right. All right. Is this the same coworker that didn't like Teen Wolf?
Yes.
All right, well, disregard their opinion.
I don't know if I like Teen Wolf. I like it as like an 80s time capsule.
Oh, Teen,
but
100%. It's not a.
Yeah.
It's not exactly
it's not a good movie.
It's good for what it is.
Yes. Yeah. It's
if you watch Teen Wolf 2, Teen Wolf 1 is a masterpiece. I'm telling you.
Teen Wolf is a perfect time capsule of the era.
Right.
Right. Like does it stand the test of time? No. Is it a good example of what movies could have been like in the mid 80s? Yes.
It's also like the shining beacon of the idea that Michael J. Fox was on fire. Like he could do no wrong in that little time period because a movie like Teen Wolf was a hit.
Yeah. Well,
basically on the back of him just being super likable.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. It certainly wasn't the plot or the execution of that movie.
Or the makeup.
Right. It's just him being charming, basically. For sure. Okay. We are at number 3 from 1974, The Godfather Part 2. Which
nice.
You already talked about a little bit in your Godfather trilogy pick.
Oh, you just wait to be triggered for the next couple picks.
I picked Godfather 2. I kind of already explained it because I think it's the one that has the biggest scope for sure. Right. Not only is it the best one, but it has the biggest scope. Whereas the other two feel like slices of the story. This one feels like the crust. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's bringing it all together and filling in all the cracks. So my number 3.
Well, my number 2 was going to be the Star Wars trilogy.
Okay.
But I will capitulate and I will pick Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
Because I think of the 3 of those, that one is the most epic of them.
I agree.
Right. Obviously, we could say that if we're like trilogy, it's an epic trilogy. Obviously, it's your hero journey.
Sure.
But the second one, Empire Strikes Back, that has probably the most story happening. That has big battles. You got good versus evil, where you got Luke Skywalker finally fighting Darth Vader for the first time. Luke's training. He's growing as a person. He doesn't grow a ton in in A New Hope. Let's be completely honest.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This one, we're kind of seeing the growth of him. The team is breaking up. They're going their own separate ways. We're given a big battle to open the movie. So yeah, I would say if you had to choose one of these 3, this is the most epic of the 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Empire Strikes Back.
I agree. Jedi also has attempts to be epic, but doesn't quite pull it off as well as Empire.
I'm on record of saying that preference-wise, I like Jedi better than Empire.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I agree that I think in terms of scope, story, epicness, Empire's the bigger movie than Jedi. Jedi's got a big space battle, but then they're also like cutting to something very small happening at the same time.
Sure. That makes sense. My number 2, Once Upon a Time in America.
Oh, I was wondering if I forgot to consider this movie. It's been so long since I've seen it.
Sure. 1984. 269 minutes for this one. How many hours is that?
That's over 4 hours.
4 hours, 48 minutes.
Almost 5. Wow.
Almost 5. This is directed by Sergio Leone, who directed the Once Upon a Time trilogy. Well, I don't know what you'd call it. The Gunslinger trilogy.
The Man with No Name trilogy.
Man with No Name trilogy. That's what it is.
Yep. I don't think none of those movies are called Once Upon a Time. You're thinking Once Upon a Time in the West.
I am thinking of that movie.
Which is not Leone, I don't think.
Yeah, it is. Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh, that's him?
Yeah, it's a Leone.
Okay. I thought that was another director.
Anyway, this is like, if you like The Godfather, you should definitely see Once Upon a Time in America. It's a, mob crime movie, but whereas The Godfather jumps around and is good, Once Upon a Time in America kind of tells a more complete single movie story of an organized crime family, starting in the 30s all the way up to like the late 60s. So you've got like this almost 40-year slice of a story that you're telling. It jumps around. multiple actors at multiple characters at different times in their life, from like young people, young teenagers, all the way up to, their 50s, basically. And it's just an epically told New York set story about this crime family, and has a stellar big cast. Another Robert De Niro movie. Evidently, De Niro's in a bunch of movies that I like that I would consider epic.
I love epic. Yeah, that's I think your third one now.
Right, third in a row too. Irishman, Godfather. Right, De Niro's
Godfather
in Godfather,
2.
and then Once Upon a Time in America. I prefer. I'm going to say a controversial thing right now. I think I prefer Once Upon a Time in America to the Godfather trilogy.
Really?
But if you pulled
Okay.
the Godfather Part 2 out of the trilogy, and I was just comparing standalone movies,
Right.
I prefer Godfather 2 over Once Upon a Time in America. Does that make any sense at all?
No, yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
As standalone movies, I think I prefer Once Upon a Time in America. But as a bigger story, I think Godfather holds up better.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. I still don't know if it does or not, but it's a thing I said, and now I'm done saying it. My number 2.
All right. Well, my number 1, I'm not going to give on this one. I'm sticking with the trilogy, and it has to be the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Okay. You're not going to pick one. Come on. Return of the King
No.
is the most epic of all 3 of those.
But
clearly,
that's just the end of the story, though. Yeah, is it the most epic movie of the 3 of them?
Where they travel the most in that movie. It has big old battle scenes. It's the end of the movie plus the epilogue or whatever you call it at the end. It's by far the most epic of all of them. Even though Two Towers is a better movie.
So this is interesting. I used to like Two Towers more.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe 5 years ago, pre-pandemic, I saw all 3 of them in the theater again. It was a re-release, and it was extended versions,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like one a week. So I saw Fellowship, 1 week, then the next week, Two Towers.
Sure.
I liked Return of the King more than Two Towers, extended version wise.
Okay.
So maybe standard version, Two Towers is the better movie. But for whatever reason, I got kind of bored with Two Towers at times. Because I think a lot of it is like Eowyn thinking about what her life with Viggo Mortensen could be.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that stuff kind of dragging it down.
Yeah. Also, like, how many times have you seen Two Towers? Because like my relationship with the movie,
handful of times. Yeah,
I imagine is similar to mine. Like yours is probably similar to mine, where like Fellowship came out and you were like, "Holy crap!" You watched Fellowship a bunch on DVD before Two Towers came out.
Yeah,
and then Two Towers came out and you were like, "Oh wow, that was even better." And then you watched Two Towers a bunch, and then by the time Return of the King came out, we all loved it, but we did not rewatch Return of the King near as much as we watched the first 2.
Not at all. Not at all.
Because it's so long. And by that point, there was just so much Lord of the Rings in like a 3-year time span.
Right. Yes.
And so I think we all gave Lord of the Rings a decade break. And then we started revisiting it. And then Return of the King feels fresh compared to the first 2, which we watched the crap out of.
Yeah. You're right. It does. And like when you're watching extended versions, like, well, these are all 4 hours long anyway. So like, what matters if this one's 5 hours long?
Right.
It doesn't. And Return of the King moves like even the extended version. There's no filler in that. Like it just goes
until the movie's basically over, and then they got 40 minutes of prologue.
Yes, but at that point, like
it's well earned.
Once you've gone through like the ring being destroyed, you go to the bathroom. Like it's just prologue. It's just people are getting on boats. People are saying goodbye. Books are being written.
Sure.
Get some popcorn. You got another 45 minutes to go. Like you're not missing anything at that point.
Sure.
Yeah, you're talking about like rewatching Fellowship. I had because these movies came out when I was in college, and I downloaded a terrible like camcorder rip.
Sure.
Of Fellowship of the
like
Ring.
A movie theater rip.
Oh yeah, the colors were washed out. The sound was breaking all the time. And I watched that so many times.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like just fired up Real Media Player, whatever it was called, on my computer, and just watched Fellowship of the Ring.
Postcard stamp sized version of it.
Yeah, yep, and all its VHS glory.
Yep.
Camcorder. Yep.
Yep.
What's your number one?
My number one, and I feel I don't know what the word is. Not ashamed. Confused, maybe. I don't know. I don't like my number one, but it is probably, by definition, the most epic movie I can think of that I've seen. But
you don't like
that
it.
I also I do like it. I'm just conflicted.
Okay.
Gone with the Wind.
Okay. Yep. Considered it.
1939. Grew up with three sisters. They loved Gone with the Wind. At least the two older ones did. Loved Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind was like a movie that was just randomly, constantly playing in my household. You know,
right.
We had it on VHS. It came on like 3 or 4 videotapes, and my sisters would just pop it in and play it for no reason. You know, one tape now and week later the next tape type of thing. It was just like a constant. It existed in my life as a young person constantly. And I enjoyed Gone with the Wind. I watched it as an adult, like in one sitting, maybe not one sitting, but like one,
one evening.
Right. Basically.
Yeah.
Seen it a couple times. I think it's from the perspective of epic filmmaking, certainly one of the better ones. Tells a big story, war story, lots of characters, lots of plot, big name actors for the time. Just epic in scope in many different ways. I wish it wasn't as racist as it is, and like not necessarily like actively racist, because it's not like they're depicting slavery and being like, this is okay, you know what I mean, type of thing.
It comes out pretty hot with the opening title card being like the ideal time of the antebellum South. Like it's talking about like how great things were during the time of slavery.
It's more racist in that it just ignores other stories that are going on at the time.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It pretends like that's not a big issue when clearly it was the issue for most people.
Right, yeah. Like Grace Kelly's character is not racist directly to her slaves.
Right.
But she owns slaves. So
right. Exactly. And so I do think like as a bit of filmmaking of its time, you're talking 80 years ago now. I understand why they told it the way they told it, but it does taint it a little for me. But as far as epic movies go, I'm not sure they get much more epic in scope than Gone with the Wind for me.
And I just want to correct myself. It's Vivian Lee, not Grace Kelly.
Right. Vivian Lee. That makes sense.
But tomato.
Definitely. All right. That was our top 10 epic films. Thank you for joining us for this episode 659 of the Cinereelists. Don't forget, there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go check it out there. You could also support us on Patreon, leave us an Apple Podcast review, or send us a listener email to heyguys@cinereelists.com, REEL with an S on the end. Next week, we will likely be discussing the movie Conclave, the religious drama, I think you'd call it.
Yeah, I think it's what papal intrigue.
Right. So if you're going to pre-watch something, make it that one. We might also do Jury Number 2. We'll see, which is a Clint Eastwood movie. We'll see if we have time for a double feature for next week, but we're definitely doing Conclave. So if you're going to pre-watch something, pre-watch that. And if you have an epic movie that we didn't mention that you think should be on our list, I'm always up for it. It was very easy to watch a couple movies for this list because when you're watching epics, one, it's a time sink. So that part wasn't easy, but they're made to be enjoyed. You know what I mean? Like they're typically not, other than runtime, they're not challenging movies.
No, they're crowd pleasers.
Right. They're crowd pleasers. So if there's any other crowd pleasers anybody knows of out there that we didn't mention, certainly send them my way because I'd watch more of these for sure. Anything else, Kyle, we need to mention? Oh, social media. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok at Cinereelists, or you can follow me on my personal Twitter, Blue Sky, or Letterbox at YoJRB.
You can find me on Letterbox at Peter SKB.
And you can find Zach at the links in this description, I'm sure.
Yeah, just look for Shaubin.
You got it.
He's only Shaubin out there.
Right. And we'll see you guys next time. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.
All right, this is spoilers for Gladiator 2. Welcome back, Zach, to the podcast.
Hi.
How was your flight?
How similar were our lists, by the way?
There were a couple that you had that we didn't have.
Okay.
Can you run them through real quick? Or just read them.
Alexander Nevsky, Ron, Lawrence of Arabia, Apocalypto, Seven Samurai, Gone with the Wind, Hero, Saving Private Ryan, Gladiator, Braveheart.
Apocalypto.
Lawrence of Arabia.
Just the ones we didn't have represented. Okay. Apocalypto and the first one.
Alexander
Nevsky. Yeah.
Right. Everything
and Saving
else.
Private Ryan. That was not any of our lists.
You're right.
Okay.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I considered Master and Commander as well, but I didn't know if that was an epic.
That's my number 10.
Okay. What about The Mission?
I considered it too, but I didn't include it.
I when you mentioned Apocalyptico, I'm like, oh, The Mission. That could have been a good contender.
Yeah.
The Mission's so good.
Also
I want that movie on 4K.
I watched that because of your top 100, James.
Yeah, it's a great one. All right. Speaking of great ones, Gladiator 2. Spoilers. If you haven't seen Gladiator 2 and you don't want to be spoiled, then don't listen to this. If you have seen it or you don't care about spoilers, then listen on. So I guess the ending, right? That's the only thing we basically didn't talk about in the review proper. The end of the movie has Paul Mescal's character, Lucius, winning and becoming emperor. Basically,
yeah. He is able to bring in an army in waiting, and has his final battle with Denzel Washington, which I never got the impression that Denzel Washington was going to be a good fighter in this movie. Like his character didn't get, like he seemed more of a talker than a fighter, so I was surprised that they had a prolonged fight.
Right.
But fine, whatever.
It made me think of the fight that was just on Netflix with Mike Tyson.
Oh, and Jake Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't watch that, but I'm assuming it was similar.
I mean, that fight was probably most likely staged. The Mike Tyson.
What do you mean by
Jake Paul fight?
staged? I think staged is a big word.
I don't think either of those men were boxing in earnest.
Right. But do you think there was a predetermined outcome?
Yes.
Yes. I also think there's a predetermined length because the longer it runs, the more advertising dollars you can get.
Interesting.
That was actually in
It
his
was on
contract. If it
Netflix.
went a certain length, he'd get more money.
It was on Netflix. Who cares about advertising dollars?
I didn't
Was
watch.
there
I assume there was some sort of promotional things happening on Netflix or some. I didn't watch it, but
I didn't either.
the longer it goes,
Yeah,
the
I know,
more
I
chance
watched
you have
it.
exposure of people to see things. You did watch it?
And did you feel like it was staged or just that they went easy on each other?
Staged.
Interesting.
And I've seen. Have you seen some videos after the fact of like Mike Tyson holding back punches?
No.
Yes.
There's some that look like. I mean, you never know, but like that
Sure.
that look like, oh, he absolutely could have taken a thing, but he didn't.
Right. There's moments where like Jake Paul drops his hands, his head's exposed, and I assume Mike Tyson would know. Okay, head exposed, punch him in the face. That's what Mike Tyson of yore would do.
Sure.
And he just fought like 4 years ago and did fine.
Right. And like this is the guy
Tyson
who was,
Yeah.
this is the guy who's ending fights first round. I mean, I know it was 90s who's ending fights first round, but still, like,
Sure. That was 30 years ago.
he's kept it up. If you watch the training videos, he's really wailing on his training partner.
Okay.
And then you're like, well, where's that energy in this fight? It's not there at all.
Gotcha.
So anyway, Gladiator 2.
Right.
Spoilers.
Anyway, Gladiator 2. Yeah, so what's there to say about this ending that we have to spoil it?
Yeah. So Zach, you thought it was stupid or dumb? I can't remember what your exact word was.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have these two armies about to fight, and then these people have a conversation. Is that river? Is that the Bosphorus? I'm just wondering. Or the Rubicon. Is that supposed to be the Rubicon that they're like
The
fighting
literal
in?
Rubicon?
Yeah,
I have no idea. It's
Okay.
a rather small river. It's like a
right.
street.
I need to look at it. That's
Okay.
the river that like no army crossed. You know what I mean? Into Rome, kind of a thing, for like the longest time. Anyways, they fight, and all of these armies are just hearing their conversation, whereas like really just like the closest 10 people would have been able to hear them. That's always a funny thing to be in movies. And then the winner of the fight, and then they all are just like, yes, he needs to be emperor. It just seemed very pat.
Yeah, like I figured in that situation, whoever's leading the what's the army, the Roman army called? Starts with the P. Not
The
proletariat.
Praetorian Guards.
Praetorian Guard, yeah. Who's that was the Hound, by the way. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I didn't catch it either, but my mother-in-law was like, "Oh, that's the Hound." I'm like, really? I mean, it turns out
Okay.
it is. Like, I assume he would just kill Paul Mezcal and be like, "Okay, now I'm in charge. I have the army."
Do you know the movie was? I mean, after Commodus was these twin emperors, and then after them was the guy that Denzel played.
You mean like an
Macrinus.
actual history?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And Macrinus was like the first like African emperor.
I did not know that. Here's something that bothered me. So we find out, I guess this is a spoiler. We find out that Lucius is the son of Maximus.
Mhm.
And James, remind me, in the original Gladiator, there's definitely some like tension between Kai Nielsen and Maximus. But do we ever get the impression that they knew each other beforehand, or that they're like, is there any allusion to an affair, or is it more like there's just some tension between them?
They certainly would have known each other.
Yeah, they knew each other, but there's never like there's never words spoken that they were
Okay.
former lovers or anything like
Okay.
that.
Right.
In fact, at the moment when when Maximus sees Lucius in the original Gladiator, so he's like a young boy, and Maximus is behind bars at the Colosseum, but he has like this legend around him. The young boy is interested in him. He doesn't recognize the kid. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't.
Yeah.
He's not operating under the assumption that this is his kid. That's for sure.
Okay.
In that movie.
So like that's a big part of this movie, is that Lucius is actually the son of Maximus.
Mm-hmm.
And that rubbed me the wrong way because original Gladiator is so much this revenge tale about Commodus killed or was ordered the death of Maximus's wife and child.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to do anything he can to avenge their death. So like in that sense, you know, he seems like this very faithful husband who only, you know, the love of his life is killed and he will not stop until he gets his revenge. And they're like, oh yeah, by the way, he also like cheated on her because, you know, you got the impression that Lucius is around the same age as his son.
Sure.
So like that, I don't know. That to me, that didn't seem like the Maximus that we saw in Gladiator did not seem like the Maximus who's also like having flings on the side and fathering other kids.
I agree. And I don't think the original movie sets that up pretty much at all.
Right.
But if you know anything about the Romans, I don't even think they considered it cheating. You know what I mean? They were like pretty promiscuous people in general. Fluid, I would say, people in general. You could easily say that your heart is with your wife and also sleep around on her. And that wasn't like a huge deal like it is in modern society. But I agree. It kind of violates the love story of the first one.
Right. And it seems unnecessary to be like, we have to really tie this back to the first Gladiator. Like, oh, you're the son of Gladiator.
Right. I also, having rewatched the original recently, got like, there's a bigger passage of time in the first one than I think, or a better represented passage of time in the first one versus this one. This one feels like it's like he becomes a gladiator, he fights some baboons, and all of a sudden they're back at the Colosseum. Like
he's back in Rome, right?
Right.
In the first one, he's like fighting out in the sticks for a while,
for like years before he gets back to the Colosseum. Yeah. But it was kind of fun to see Denzel chew scenery often. Like the scene where he's stabbing, this is a spoiler that we didn't talk about, when he's motivating one of the twins to murder the other twin.
Mm-hmm.
And then the twin won't actually pull the trigger. And then he basically grabs his hand and like forces him to stab his brother. That was a very unhinged scene, I would say.
Yeah.
Even for Denzel, it was very maniacal.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then
I liked when the twin picked his monkey to be consul.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the whole head scene.
Right. Yeah. He brings the head in, is talking to the head. And yeah, I
Mhm.
thought that was, I kind of wanted this movie to not be Gladiator. I just wanted it to be Denzel Roman political machinations. I think that was the more interesting movie.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
than,
if they
like,
didn't
the
have
tale of Lucius.
For sure. If they didn't have the Paul Mescal character, because it's so easy to compare that to the Russell Crowe character. And they didn't do him any favors by like making the movie all about Maximus, putting Maximus's armor in the movie, giving the main character the same path.
I hated that when they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we got his armor in the basement.
Right.
You're like, oh, he's gonna put the armor on. Like it's gonna be so stupid.
Also, like in the original Gladiator movie, when Russell Crowe says things like strength and honor and like some of these other things, I actually believed he meant those things. But when Lucius in this movie said him, I just didn't buy it. I didn't buy that character was made of those words. Not that he didn't have strength or honor. It's just not something that character would say out loud.
Right, because Maximus was a general. He was loyal to Rome.
Right.
So like you felt like he embodied the ideal Roman principle.
Right.
Right,
I wish they
where-
would have given the new guy his own catchphrases, I guess.
Yeah, like Lucius was happy living exile. like he wasn't pining to go back to Rome.
Yabba dabba doo.
Yabba dabba doo.
Bring the boom.
Hose him
Like-
off, something like that.
Well, why does Lucius care about Rome? Like he wants his revenge.
Mhm.
Like that I get, I guess. But like, why does he care? Like, right, he doesn't care. He's in exile and he's happy living where he lives.
Mhm.
Can you guys clarify something? Does he definitely know and remember who he was and everything, or did he forget all that?
No, he
I think
remembered.
he
He was
definitely
just
remembered.
mad at his mom
Okay.
for letting him go.
Why did she send him off and rather than go with him?
I don't think she could leave.
Yeah, I think she thought if he left and she stayed, there was less likely that they would chase him down or find him.
Okay.
Like her and him together stick out like a sore thumb. This young boy that most people don't know what he looks like, if he went off on his own, he has a better chance. That's just my guess. I
And then
I
did
don't
she
think
have
the
no
movie ever
plan?
said that.
To like bring him back ever? Or that was just going to be it?
I think it was a moment of you are not safe here. You must leave.
Right.
And then
Yeah, but-
we'll figure it out later.
But she never did. I mean, he's like 30 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think she made an impulse decision, but it was probably it's either send him away or he's going to be killed.
Mhm.
But like, did
We don't
she
have
know
ti-
where he went?
I don't think so.
She just didn't ask.
No,
She was like-
she's not gonna be like, oh hey, by the way, where are you taking him? No, I really
Yeah,
feel like
of course you would. Of course you
No,
would.
things were crumbling. Like I again, I haven't seen Gladiator, and the scene they showed that was like something they shot for this movie, right? Of him being exiled or him being sent away.
I believe so, yeah.
Use some de-aging, whatnot. I'm pretty sure it's like, oh, things are going south real fast, and like if I don't send you away, you will die. So I don't think she had time to make a plan beyond you must leave, which I can understand why he'd be mad at his mother for being like just sending him away, and then there is no plan beyond that.
Right. And also, like, if your son is constantly in danger because he's, supposed to get the throne, if I was the mother, I wouldn't want to know, because then people could do things to me to get that out of me. But if I literally don't know, then I don't know. So maybe she actively didn't know
I'm not
on
buying
purpose.
it. I'm not buying it.
You're
I would
buying
think
that,
she-
but the CG baboons were all right.
those. I'm telling you, those baboons look like real baboons. I sent Kyle a hairless picture of a baboon. It looks exactly like the movie.
I guess so. Maybe it does look like an actual hairless baboon, but in the moment, I was not believing that those were baboons. So whether it's accurate or not, the film did a poor job of having me believe that it was accurate.
My
And I
TV can
will say-
generate better baboons than that.
But I thought it generated very accurate looking baboons. It just we as people don't know what baboons look like.
Kyle,
There's the uncanny baboon valley, and this movie stepped into it.
my new TV
Uh,
has a screensaver where you can generate AI images for the
Oh, jeez.
screensaver.
All right, the first thing I want you to set it to is hairless baboons.
Okay, and then I'll send you the
Until-
photo.
Yeah, or like hairless. If you can go as far as like hairless baboons fighting in a arena.
They won't let us do fighting. We tried that earlier today.
Oh, okay. All right. Can you say like hairless baboons next to a gladiator?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And then let's see if that's better or worse than whatever we got from this movie.
I guarantee you it'll be worse. But anyway, what were you saying, Zach, when I interrupted you?
Oh yeah. So whatever.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
All right. Anything else spoilery? Oh, the mother dies. How do we feel about that? I didn't really care.
Yeah, I didn't have any particular feelings.
I thought the mother was far more intriguing as fodder for Commodus in the first movie. She was like scared to make a move any direction.
Yeah.
I thought that was far more interesting than her role in this movie.
Is that because Commodus was just a better bad guy
Probably.
and like
maybe
had
not-
depth to him and
Maybe not better, just better, more intertwined with her situation.
I think he was a more complicated bad guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Like these emperors just seemed bad at emperoring.
Well, they moved the kind of like wicked deliciousness of the bad guy from the emperor to Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
And then they kept it at bay until very close to the very end. And then you realized, oh, he's a psychopath.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Whereas Commodus in the original, he's a psychopath from, half an hour in on. Once he kills his father, you're like, oh, this guy will do anything.
Oh, yeah, right. He's a bad dude.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else spoiler for Gladiator 2?
That's all I got.
I kind of want to give it another half-star bump just for naming itself Gladiator 2 with like no tagline, no colon. Just this is the second one. All right, get over it.
Well, or if you saw in the theater, it was called Glad-to-ator.
Sure.
I liked when that did that. with the
No, that's
logo. I
clever.
thought it was
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. That was kind of
Yeah.
cool.
Well, how'd you guys feel about the opening credits that kind of were styled like the Scott Free logo? You know, like the normal
I
logo
liked it. Yeah,
in front of a
Yeah,
Ridley
I
Scott
liked it.
movie.
Oh, yeah.
liked it.
Did we really need a recap of the original though? I guess some people
think-
do.
If you never saw Gladiator, maybe you did.
Did those credits really give you a backstory for Gladiator if you've never seen the original? I don't think there was enough there. I think it's
You
only
wanted a
for
good-
people who
You
had
wanted a
seen
good
it.
half hour of a backstory, and then
No, I don't know what I wanted, but it wasn't that. All right. That's it for Gladiator 2. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.